In October 2025, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea stood as a fortress of fear, its capital, Pyongyang, a meticulously crafted stage for the eternal cult of Kim Jong-Un. At 41, the supreme leader was both god and tyrant, his image omnipresent, plastered on billboards, woven into school hymns, etched into the minds of a people conditioned to revere him. Yet beneath the crimson banners and synchronized military parades, the nation was fracturing. The famine of 2024 had left millions starving, their emaciated bodies a silent rebuke to the regime's propaganda of prosperity. International sanctions strangled the economy, and whispers of dissent stirred in the shadows, fueled by smuggled glimpses of the outside world on illicit radios and phones. Kim's health was the regime's deepest secret. His obesity, rumored to exceed 330 pounds, coupled with diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease, made him a medical liability. Foreign doctors, vetted by the State Security Department, SSD, were summoned to keep him alive, their presence a necessity cloaked in secrecy. Kim's paranoia, honed by decades of propaganda and betrayal, saw enemies everywhere: South Korea, the United States, China, even his own generals. Deep in the mountains of Gangwon Province, a hidden weapons depot housed hypersonic missiles and chemical warheads, a secret known only to Kim's inner circle and guarded by elite SSD troops. Codenamed Project Eternal Flame, the depot was the regime's trump card, a weapon to ensure its survival against any threat. In this climate of oppression, an unlikely figure emerged: Park Hae-suk, a 72-year-old widow from a forgotten village in Gangwon Province. Her accidental discovery of the depot would ignite a firestorm, exposing the regime's secrets and unleashing a cascade of tragedy, drama, and action that would shake North Korea to its core. Chapter 1. The Widow's Discovery. Park Hae-suk shuffled through the rugged hills of Gangwon Province, her back bent from decades of labor, her hands gnarled from years of toil in rice fields and coal mines. At 72, Hae-suk was a survivor of North Korea's brutal history. Born during the Korean War, she had endured famine, purges, and the loss of her husband, Min-ho, and son, Jae-sung, to the regime's labor camps in the 1990s. Her village, a cluster of mud brick huts nestled in a valley, was a forgotten outpost, its people scraping by on meager rations of cornmeal and wild herbs. Hae-suk's only solace was her herb garden, where she gathered roots and leaves to supplement her diet and trade for scraps at the local market. On October 5, 2025, while foraging in the mountains, Hae-suk's life changed forever. She ventured deeper into the hills than usual, driven by hunger and a need to find ginseng for her granddaughter, Ji-won, who was battling a fever. As she climbed a rocky outcrop, she stumbled upon a hidden entrance, a steel door camouflaged with vines and stone, guarded by soldiers in black uniforms bearing the SSD's insignia. Hae-suk, her instincts sharpened by years of survival, hid behind a boulder, her heart pounding as she watched trucks unload crates marked with chemical symbols and the words, "Eternal Flame." She overheard the soldiers' whispers, their voices low but careless. The supreme leader's new weapons, enough to burn Seoul to ash, hypersonic missiles, chemical warheads. Hae-suk's blood ran cold. She had secretly listened to South Korean radio broadcasts on a transistor hidden beneath her floorboards, a relic from her husband's days as a smuggler. She understood the gravity of her discovery. The depot was a threat to millions, a secret the regime would kill to protect. Driven by a mix of fear and resolve, Hae-suk memorized the depot's location, sketching the coordinates in the dirt with a stick. In a moment of daring, she stole a guard's logbook, dropped carelessly during a shift change. The logbook contained coded references to Project Eternal Flame, delivery schedules, and Russian technical advisors. Hae-suk knew the risk. Exposure meant death, not just for her, but for Ji-won, her 16-year-old granddaughter, her last living family. Yet her grief for Min-ho and Jae-sung, who had died for daring to question the regime, fueled her resolve. "If I stay silent," she whispered, clutching the logbook, "their deaths mean nothing." Chapter 2. The Spark of Rebellion. Hye-suk knew she couldn't act alone. She confided in Choi Eun-hee, a 45-year-old former schoolteacher who ran a clandestine defector network in Pyongyang. Choi had lost her husband and daughter to the regime's purges for possessing a South Korean radio. Her grief transformed into a quiet rebellion. Her safe house, hidden in Pyongyang's slums, was a hub for smuggling information to China, where defectors relayed it to South Korean activists. Hye-suk traveled to Pyongyang under the guise of visiting a black market, the logbook hidden in her shawl, her heart pounding with every step past SSD checkpoints. In a derelict alley, Hye-suk met Choi, her hands trembling as she handed over the logbook. "This is their secret," she said, her voice low but firm. "The world must know what Kim is hiding." Choi, stunned by the evidence, felt a surge of hope and fear. The logbook was a weapon, but its exposure would bring the regime's wrath. She promised to send it to her Chinese liaison, Lee Min-soo, a 40-year-old former smuggler who had escaped North Korea in 2020. But the SSD was already closing in. Major General Kang Min-jae, the SSD's counterintelligence chief, had intercepted rumors of a village woman spying in Kangwon. Kang, a gaunt, ruthless loyalist at 47, was obsessed with protecting Kim's regime. His cold eyes and sharp features belied a mind that saw enemies everywhere. The depot's secrecy was paramount, and Kang saw the leak as a threat to national survival and an opportunity to purge rivals like General Park Seung-ho, the military logistics chief, whom he suspected of disloyalty. On October 8th, SSD troops raided Hye-suk's village, their boots trampling her herb garden. Ji-won, her granddaughter, fought back, her screams echoing as soldiers beat her with batons. Hye-suk was dragged from her hut, her frail body thrown into a black van. Taken to a detention center beneath the Ministry of State Security, she faced Kang's wrath. "Who did you tell?" he demanded, slamming her against a concrete wall. "You're a traitor to the supreme leader." Hye-suk, her face bruised but her spirit unbroken, spat in defiance. "Your leader is a coward hiding weapons to kill innocents," she said, her voice steady despite the pain. Kang, enraged, ordered her tortured, electric shocks, waterboarding, starvation, to extract the names of her contacts. Ji-won, detained in a nearby cell, wept as she heard her grandmother's cries, her own fate uncertain. Chapter 3. The Boy in the Shadows. In a crumbling orphanage on Pyongyang's outskirts, 10-year-old Malik Jones overheard whispers of Hye-suk's arrest. Malik was an anomaly in North Korea, a black child in a land of enforced homogeneity. Born in Chicago to Sarah Jones, an American aid worker, and Daniel Mwangi, a Kenyan diplomat, Malik's life had been shattered in 2023 when his mother was detained on fabricated espionage charges during a humanitarian mission. Sentenced to a labor camp near the Yalu River, Sarah was torn from Malik, who was placed in the orphanage as a propaganda stunt to showcase the regime's mercy. The orphanage was a hellscape, its walls stained with mold, its air heavy with despair. Guards beat Malik for his foreign appearance, their batons leaving bruises on his dark skin. The other children, conditioned by fear, shunned him, calling him outsider. But Malik was resilient. He learned Korean in months, mimicking the guards' dialects to blend in. He memorized their routines, noting unlocked doors and gaps in fences. Hidden passages in the orphanage's crumbling walls became his refuge, where he scavenged for scraps and eavesdropped on secrets. One night, Malik overheard guards discussing Hye-suk's discovery of a secret depot and her arrest. The story stirred hope in his heart. If this woman had defied the regime, she might hold the key to exposing its cruelty and saving his mother. Driven by desperation and courage, Malik began sneaking out at night, navigating Pyongyang's alleys and sewers to reach the detention center. His small size made him a ghost, invisible to SSD patrols. Chapter 4. The Mossad's Gambit. Unknown to Kim, a covert operation was unfolding in the heart of his regime. Dr. Elias Cohen, a 50-year-old Mossad agent posing as Kim's Swiss cardiologist, had infiltrated Pyongyang in 2023. His mission was to gather intelligence on the Kangwon weapons depot and monitor Kim's failing health, a critical factor in the regime's stability. Cohen's encrypted reports to Tel Aviv, sent via a microchip hidden in his stethoscope, detailed Kim's medication regimen, palace security protocols, and intercepted communications about Russian technical aid for missile development. Cohen learned of Hye Suk's arrest through Choi Eun-hee, who contacted him via a coded message dropped in a palace corridor. Choi told him the logbook was en route to China, but that Hye Suk's capture threatened the operation. Cohen saw an opportunity. Amplifying Hye Suk's discovery could destabilize the regime, creating chaos to cover his extraction of depot data and possibly his own escape. The global exposure of Project Eternal Flame could force the UN to act, weakening Kim's grip. Cohen encountered Malik by chance near the detention center, spotting the boy's stealthy movements in a darkened alley. Impressed by his courage, Cohen knelt to meet his gaze. "You're a ghost in their system, kid," he said, his voice low. "Help me get a message to the woman. It could hurt them where it counts." Malik, driven by hope for his mother, nodded. "If it helps my mom, I'll do it," he said, his eyes fierce despite his fear. Cohen gave him a microchip containing a coded message for Choi's network, confirming the depot's location, Kim's health crisis, and Russian involvement. "Get this to her," Cohen said, his hand steady on Malik's shoulder. "It's our chance to hit back." Chapter 5. The Labyrinth of Courage. Malik infiltrated the detention center through a ventilation shaft, navigating a labyrinth of damp, rat-infested tunnels. The air was thick with mold, and his stolen flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the concrete walls. His knees were scraped raw, his heart pounding with fear and determination. He thought of his mother's smile, her voice urging him to be strong, and pressed on, driven by the hope that helping Hye Suk might lead to Sarah's freedom. Reaching Hye Suk's cell, Malik whispered through a grate, his voice barely audible over the hum of the facility's generators. "I'm Malik. I'm here to help you." Hye Suk, frail and bruised, was stunned. Her face was swollen from beatings, her wrists raw from chains, her gray hair matted with sweat. "A child?" she murmured, her voice weak but warm. "Why risk this, little one?" "For my mom," Malik said, his eyes burning with resolve. "She's in a camp. You told the truth about their weapons. I want to help." Using a keycard stolen from a sleeping guard, Malik unlocked Hye Suk's cell. Her legs trembled as she stood, her body frail but her spirit unbroken. "You're braver than most men I've known," she said, a faint smile breaking through her pain. They fled through the tunnels, the sound of boots echoing behind them. Alarms blared as guards discovered the breach, their shouts reverberating through the concrete maze. Cohen, waiting in an alley outside, provided cover with a concealed pistol, his Mossad training guiding his aim. He took down 3 guards, their bodies crumpling in the rain-soaked street, before a bullet tore through his shoulder, sending him to his knees. "Get to the river!" he shouted, his voice raw with pain. Malik and Hye Suk reached the Taedong River, their lungs burning, their clothes soaked with sweat and mud. Malik threw the microchip into the water, watching it sink beneath the dark current. The device activated a satellite uplink, transmitting Cohen's message to the defector network in China. But SSD troops closed in, their flashlights cutting through the night. Malik pushed Hye Suk behind a boulder, whispering, "Hide." He drew their attention, running along the riverbank as bullets tore through the reeds, one grazing his arm, drawing a sharp cry. Hyesuk, torn between fear and loyalty, followed, refusing to abandon the boy who had risked everything for her. They were cornered near a bridge, the SSD's shouts deafening. Malik, his small body trembling, stood in front of Hyesuk, his eyes defiant. "You'll never break us," he told the soldiers, his voice a whisper of steel. The SSD captured them both, their wrists bound, their hopes fading as they were dragged back to the detention center. Cohen, bleeding out in the alley, activated a dead man's switch on his microchip, ensuring his final report reached Mossad. His last thought was of Malik's courage and Hyesuk's defiance, sparks in a land of darkness. Chapter 6. The Palace of Vengeance. Kang presented Hyesuk and Malik to Kim in the Ryong-song residence, its marble halls gleaming with opulence, a stark contrast to the nation's poverty. Kim, his face flushed with rage, sat on a gilded chair, his bulk straining the seams of his tailored suit. "This woman exposed my weapons, and this child aided her," he roared, shattering a crystal decanter with a slam of his fist. "They are traitors who seek to destroy me." Kim's sister, Kim Yo-jong, watched from the shadows, her sharp features unreadable. At 38, Yo-jong was cunning and ambitious, her loyalty to her brother matched by her hunger for power. She saw the crisis as a chance to purge rivals like General Park Seung-ho and consolidate her influence. "Execute them publicly, dear leader," she urged, her voice smooth but calculated. "Show the world your divinity." Kim, his paranoia at a fever pitch, agreed. "Make them suffer," he ordered, his eyes glinting with malice. "Let the world know what happens to those who defy me." Hyesuk and Malik were taken to separate cells beneath the palace, where SSD interrogators used every tool to break them. Hyesuk endured sleep deprivation, starvation, and electric shocks, her frail body racked with pain. She thought of Minho and Jae-sung, their faces giving her strength. "Your weapons will be your downfall," she whispered to her tormentors, her voice steady. Malik, his small body bruised and bleeding, refused to crack. He invented stories, claiming he was a lost orphan who had stumbled into the detention center by accident. His defiance was fueled by memories of his mother's courage, her voice telling him to be strong. "You're nothing without fear," he told his interrogators, his eyes burning with a fire that belied his age. Ji-won, detained in a nearby camp, learned of her grandmother's arrest. Her grief and anger fueled a desperate plan to escape and expose the regime's brutality, vowing to honor Hyesuk's sacrifice. Chapter 7. The Defectors' Rebellion. Choi Un-hee's defector network, operating from a safe house in Pyongyang's slums, received Cohen's report via the Chinese liaison, Lee Min-soo. The report detailed the depot's coordinates, Kim's health crisis, and Russian missile technology transfers. On October 15, 2025, as Kim prepared for his Chuseok address, Choi's team hacked into state television, broadcasting the leaked footage to millions. Citizens, gathered in public squares for mandatory screenings, saw images of chemical warheads, mass graves in the mountains, and Kim's lavish palaces juxtaposed with famine-stricken villages. Gasps rippled through the crowds, and even loyalists hesitated, their faith shaken. Choi's network faced relentless danger. SSD raids killed dozens of her allies, their bodies left in alleys as warnings. She lost her closest friend, Kim Soo-jin, a 30-year-old teacher, to a firing squad, but her resolve hardened. "Hyesuk and Malik defied a god," she told her team, her voice trembling with resolve. "We must keep their fire alive." Lee Min-soo, working from China, smuggled the logbook to South Korean activists, who shared it with global media. The footage went viral, sparking outrage. The UN called an emergency session, and even China, wary of instability, issued a rare rebuke, reducing aid to Pyongyang. Chapter 8. The Chuseok Spectacle. Kim ordered Hyesuk and Malik's execution at the Kumsusan Palace, a grand spectacle to restore his image as an invincible deity. The square was packed with thousands of loyalists, their faces a mix of fear, fervor, and curiosity. Banners fluttered in the wind, proclaiming the glory of the Kim dynasty. Hye-suk and Malik, frail and chained, were paraded before the crowd, their bodies bruised, their spirits battered but unbroken. Kang read a fabricated confession, branding them traitors sent by the West to sabotage Project Eternal Flame. As the executioner raised his rifle, Malik broke free, his small hands grabbing a Workers' Party flag from a nearby stand. He climbed a statue of Kim Il-sung, his movements swift despite his injuries. Waving the flag defiantly, he shouted in Korean, "The world knows your lies! You can't hide!" His voice, high and clear, pierced the silence, echoing across the square. Hye-suk, inspired by his courage, struggled against her chains, her voice raw with defiance. "Your weapons will burn you, not the world!" she screamed, her gray hair wild in the wind. The crowd gasped, some whispering in awe, others in terror. A few soldiers lowered their rifles, their loyalty wavering. For a moment, time froze, the air thick with tension. Then 2 shots rang out, one after the other. Malik fell first, his small body crumpling on the marble, the flag slipping from his hands. Hye-suk followed, her body collapsing beside him, their blood pooling together in a crimson stain. The crowd erupted, some weeping openly, others shouting in defiance, their voices drowned by SSD batons and tear gas. Kim, watching from a balcony, felt a chill despite the warmth of his fur-lined coat. The execution was meant to silence dissent, but it had ignited a spark, a ripple of rebellion that could not be contained. Chapter 9. The Granddaughter's Resolve. In a labor camp near the Yalu River, Ji-won learned of her grandmother's death through a smuggled note from Choi's network. Her grief was unbearable, but it fueled her determination. At 16, Ji-won was fierce and resourceful, her spirit unbroken despite the camp's brutality. She befriended a fellow prisoner, Han Soo-min, a 25-year-old former nurse who had been arrested for aiding defectors. Together, they planned an escape, using smuggled tools, a shard of metal, a stolen wire cutter, to weaken the camp's fence. On a moonless night, Ji-won and Soo-min slipped through the fence, pursued by guard dogs and gunfire. Soo-min drew the guards' attention, sacrificing herself to let Ji-won reach the Yalu River. Ji-won swam across the icy waters, her body numb, her mind fixed on Hye-suk's courage. She collapsed in a Chinese safe house, where Lee Min-soo gave her Hye-suk's logbook, now a symbol of resistance. "Your grandmother changed everything," he said. Ji-won vowed to carry her legacy, determined to expose the regime. Chapter 10. The Mother's Odyssey. In another Yalu River camp, Sarah Jones toiled in a coal mine, her body frail from starvation, her spirit sustained by memories of Malik. At 35, Sarah was a shadow of the vibrant aid worker who had come to North Korea to deliver food aid. Her detention in 2023 on fabricated espionage charges had broken her body, but not her resolve. When rumors reached the camp of a black boy and an elderly woman defying the supreme leader in Pyongyang, Sarah knew it was Malik, her heart shattering. A fellow prisoner, Lee Min-soo's brother, Lee Dong-ho, a 38-year-old former smuggler, saw her grief and vowed to help her escape. They dug a tunnel under the camp's fence, hiding dirt in their clothes. On a stormy night, they crawled through, pursued by guards. Dong-ho sacrificed himself, drawing fire to let Sarah reach the river. She crossed into China, collapsing in Lee Min-soo's safe house, where she learned of Malik and Hye-suk's deaths. "My boy," she sobbed, clutching a tattered photo of Malik, vowing to tell their story. Chapter 11. The General's Betrayal. General Park, Seung-ho, accused of negligence in securing the depot, rallied his loyalists in the military, sparking a power struggle with Kang. Park, 52, was a pragmatic officer who had long questioned Kim's reckless policies but lacked the courage to act. Kang's accusations pushed him to the edge, and on October 20th, a skirmish erupted at a military base near Pyongyang. Park's forces clashed with SSD units, the fighting spilling into the streets, leaving dozens dead and buildings smoldering. Kim, enraged by the chaos, ordered both men arrested. Kang was executed in a secret purge, his ambitions crushed, while Park was sent to a labor camp, his fate uncertain. The power struggle exposed cracks in the regime's unity, fueling whispers of rebellion among the military. Chapter 12. The Defectors' Fight. Choi Yun-hee's network grew bolder, smuggling radios and pamphlets that told of Hye-suk and Malik's defiance. Their names became legends, scrawled in secret graffiti on Pyongyang's walls. Hye-suk and Malik live. Choi faced constant danger, her safe house raided weekly by SSD forces. She lost her closest ally, Kim Soo-jin, to a firing squad, but her resolve hardened. "They died for us," she told her team, her eyes burning. "We will not let their sacrifice fade." The leaked footage spread beyond North Korea, reaching South Korea, Japan, and the West. Protests erupted in Seoul, with students chanting Hye-suk and Malik's names. The UN imposed new sanctions, targeting Kim's offshore accounts and military suppliers. China, fearing instability, reduced aid, forcing Kim to divert resources to quell dissent. Chapter 13. The world's response. Sarah and Ji-won, now in South Korea, spoke at a UN conference in Seoul, their voices breaking as they described Hye-suk and Malik's sacrifice. "My grandmother exposed a tyrant's secrets," Ji-won said, tears streaming. "She and Malik gave their lives for the truth." Sarah added, "My son was 10. Their courage is North Korea's hope." Their words sparked global outrage. Protests spread to Tokyo, Washington, and London, with activists holding vigils for Hye-suk and Malik. Their images, an elderly woman defying a regime, a boy waving a flag, became symbols of resistance, plastered on posters and social media. Chapter 14. The Smoldering Flame. Kim's regime survived, but it was wounded. The weapons depot was abandoned under international pressure, its engineers reassigned. Kim's health faltered further, his heart strained by stress and excess. Kim Yo-jong prepared for a potential succession, her ambition a growing threat to her brother's rule. She tightened security, purging suspected dissidents, but the whispers of rebellion grew louder, fueled by smuggled footage and Hye-suk and Malik's legacy. Choi's network expanded, training new recruits in secret. They smuggled pamphlets into labor camps, telling of the woman and the boy who defied a god. Sarah and Ji-won, now activists, worked with defectors to expose North Korea's horrors, their grief a fuel for change. Sarah founded a foundation in Malik's name, Ji-won 1, in Hye-suk's, both dedicated to helping North Korean refugees. The tragedy of Hye-suk and Malik was that they never saw the impact of their actions. Hye-suk's discovery, born of courage, and Malik's selfless bravery, driven by love for his mother, lit a spark that could not be extinguished. Their deaths, meant to silence dissent, gave voice to the oppressed. In the markets of Pyongyang, in the labor camps of the North, in the hearts of those who dared to dream, their names became a mantra: Hye-suk and Malik. The regime tightened its grip, but the cracks widened, the whispers grew louder, and the hope endured. One day, the people would rise, and the spark would become a flame.